Well, here with my second interview on the Helicopter Podcast. Man, HAI Day 1, nothing beats it. Dennis Martin from Enstrom, welcome to my show. How are you feeling right now?
Overwhelmed. I mean, even before the show started this morning, our booth was full.
That's incredible.
I don't know where the people came from, but the turnout here this year is just amazing. There's so much energy in this room. Really exciting.
Yeah, it's wild. One of the things that I love about Heli Expo is helicopters can feel small. The industry can feel small.
Yeah.
Right? Because I could meet a helicopter pilot at a bar, and before you know it, we know the same 10 people, and we've done the same jobs. It can feel small, but then you come to an event like this, and it's like, you know what? This is actually a big industry.
Yeah.
There's so many people kind of within this industry. And we won't go touch on it quite yet, but I'm actually curious to learn more about Enstrom, and it's what you guys are doing in the industry. But first and foremost, let's backtrack. 1959, a company has started, Enstrom Helicopters, and it's now 2024. Just share with us a little bit the history of Enstrom Helicopters and essentially how it's become an iconic brand in our space.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting story. So, for those that don't know, Enstrom is located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Okay.
Michigan's in two halves, and the Upper Peninsula is just north of Wisconsin. We're about 60 miles north of Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Are you a Packers fan?
We're legally required to be Packers fans.
Okay, good. Well,
yes.
we can be friends.
Okay, so what happened was in the late 40s, a mechanic at a mine named Rudy Enstrom got the idea that he was going to build himself a helicopter, and he had never seen one in person.
Like one does.
Yeah, I figured this out, and he was. I met one of his daughters, and she just, he said, Dad was always in the garage tinkering. That's what he did. So he started building prototypes, and he would go and test them in a quarry. He was not a pilot, and so he would kind of run them up in the quarry, and then we got some early, Super 8 video of him kind of taxiing around, and eventually he got to the point where a couple of these were hovering, so he was hiring a pilot out of Chicago. You think the industry is small now. This was the early 50s, mid-50s. He'd have to go to Chicago to get a helicopter pilot.
That's crazy.
And so he's hiring a pilot out of Chicago to come up and do some testing, and they got some early videos of them hovering. I was told that they got one into forward flight once, and it just scared the heck out of the guy. But what happened is in the late 50s, a tool salesman from Menominee, Michigan, his name was Jack Christensen, was calling on all the mines in the area, selling them tools. And, of course, Rudy was a mechanic at the mine, the engineer there, so he got to know him and heard about his helicopter, and he said, wow, there could be a business here. There's an idea. And so he got some investors together, and they incorporated in December of 1959.
Wow.
And so that's how the company was really, it's got Rudy's name, was really kind of started by Jack. And they hired some engineers from out east, and notably a guy named Al Ballure, who was over in Traverse City, Michigan. And he had done some of the early investigative work on the aircraft for the investors. And so he came over as chief engineer, and they started to design what became the Enstrom helicopter. And sort of quickly, they took most of what Rudy did and threw it out.
Okay.
And he wasn't real happy with that. He actually left the company about a year or two later. He didn't stay with the company very long. Yeah, which is a little bit unfortunate. But by then, the seed had been planted, and they started moving on. And so this small team of engineers started building these aircraft, these prototypes. The first prototype was two-bladed. And they quickly went to a three-bladed. It had a rigid in-plane rotor system, so it was supposed to be like a BK or a BO-105. Eventually, they moved to a universal block of a soft in-plane system. And what's interesting is how they funded all this. So between 1960 and 1965, when they're developing the helicopter, they burned through about $6 million,
which in today's dollars is a lot.
It's a lot of money. Yeah. And they funded. It was all community funded. So we have pictures of them. They sold stock all throughout northeast Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, and the Upper Peninsula. And we've got pictures of them taking the helicopter to county fairs, saying, buy stock in the R.J. Enstrom Corporation. It was the R.J. Enstrom Corporation back then. And And they would hire Green Bay Packer players to come up and, come meet, Johnny Gray at the Holiday Inn Ballroom and meet the Packer player, and they'd try to sell you stock. And it was $50 a share. I actually have a stock certificate.
I was going to say, do you have a share?
I bought one, yeah. They're worthless now, but I did buy one, and they pop up once in a while.
That's a very Green Bay thing, because I think the football team is community owned, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's the only community owned, publicly owned football team.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So that's how they funded development of the first prototype and the first helicopter. So they certified in 1965 the F-28.
Okay.
And it was a real racehorse, 195 horsepower, to kind of barely get out of its own way. But if you look at the other helicopters of the day, the Schweitzer 269s and the Bell 47s,
sure.
They all just kind of had open, frames and open tail booms and whatnot. And here comes this Enstrom, and it's fully cowled with a monocoque tail boom and nice flush-fitting doors and everything. It must have looked like a Ferrari.
That was so revolutionary for the time.
Yeah, and what's sort of interesting is 1965, when we came out, first year we came out with our helicopter, we won Michigan Product of the Year.
Wow.
1965 was the year the Ford Mustang came out. Okay.
Stiff competition.
So
I mean, it does fly.
Yeah.
So kind of the Mustang didn't stand a chance.
Yeah. So we, in the day, it was quite the revolution. And fast forward a couple years, the company was bought. It was privatized, so they bought all the stock. Purex Corporation bought all the stock, and they were going to make a. They were going to put a turbine in it. They had a little Garrett turbine they were going to put in there for the U.S. Army. We got pictures of it flying. It's kind of cool. The thing burned like 45 gallons of fuel an hour, so that didn't really work.
Super efficient.
Yeah. And they had upgraded the aircraft. They made it the A model. And we eventually built about 400 A models. They're good helicopters. In the early 70s, they had kind of lost interest in it, and the company was actually closed for about 7 months while they were finding a new buyer, and that new buyer was F. Lee Bailey.
Okay.
And depending on what generation you're from, you may or may not know that, but F. Lee Bailey was a famous / infamous trial lawyer from the 70s. And he was one of the first sort of celebrity attorneys.
Interesting.
He worked on the O.J. Simpson case. He was one of the guys on the O.J. Simpson case,
sure.
One of his last big hurrahs. But he was a real famous guy back then, and he had flown in the Navy in Korea, and came back and was an airplane pilot, helicopter pilot. Had bought an Enstrom, really liked it, and took the opportunity to buy the company.
Sure.
And injected a lot of his. He had a lot of swagger, right?
To be a celebrity attorney, that's kind of the MO.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best guy to own a helicopter or a helicopter company, really.
Well, so from what I was told is everybody in Michigan loved him.
Okay.
Or Menominee loved him. Again, there may be people who felt he was controversial. He had some stances on the Vietnam War and whatnot that were controversial. But he took great care of the people in Menominee. And everybody there spoke very highly of him. And so F. Lee sold more Enstroms than anybody. Over that next basically 8 or 9 years, that was the heyday of general aviation.
Sure.
And, Cessna, Piper were cranking out airplanes. And at one point, we were kicking out over 100 helicopters a year.
Real quick, who was the client at that time?
It was everything. I mean, we were selling police departments, agricultural spraying, flight schools, and high net worth individuals.
Sure.
It was the real traditional market, and that was back in the day when you'd go down to your upper middle class guy would go down to the Cessna dealer and just buy a new Cessna.
Buy a Cessna.
And
pay today and take it away today.
Yeah,
sure.
And a little bit more money, you'd get a new Enstrom. And and so and they had awful paint schemes. They were gold and green, typical 70s.
What would do you know the cost of the Enstrom at that time?
I want to say they were about $40,000.
About $40,000.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
I like that.
So which was probably what maybe a Baron or something was costing,
sure.
or a Twin Comanche. They were expensive.
Yeah.
But nowhere near what they were, relatively speaking, what they are today. So in 75, Bailey he commissioned a Boston design firm to redesign the A model to make it cooler. Okay,
Cool.
Basically, the A model had a real sort of flat nose on it. And so they redesigned the sort of profile of the aircraft. The mechanics stayed the same, and the airframe stayed the same, but the profile, they put what we call the shark nose on it.
Sure.
That became the 280. And the 280 has been sort of, since then, universally regarded as one of the best-looking helicopters out there. It's just
100%.
They just hit it, and it went on to win a lot of industrial design awards and whatnot. It just a subtle change to that cabin shape just went with the lines of that helicopter, and boom, they had a winner.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
With the design agency that did that, were they aviation specific, or was it just like a design?
It was a Boston industrial design firm.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and they just sketched it out, and then the guys in Michigan
the
built
engineering
it.
group was able to kind of take that vision on paper and actually put it in practice.
Yeah. So we started kicking out 280s. Still kept building the F-28 series, so now we had sort of two product lines. And also in, I think, 76, we turbocharged the aircraft. So the early ones are naturally aspirated. They were good. They were legally 3-seat aircraft, but they're really kind of good 2-seat aircraft, 200 horsepower. But they didn't really have a lot of high density, hot and high or anything like that. So we put a turbo on in 76, and that really transformed the helicopter. Now you had a helicopter that, made full power up 10,000 feet, could really haul a load.
Impressive.
Yeah. And really laid, we sold a lot of those. Those C's is when things really started taking off. So what happened was then, building on this success is in the late 70s, they got the idea they were going to build a 4-place. And it was called the Hawk.
Okay.
And it was a stretched 280. On paper, it was the 280L.
Okay.
And we built 2 prototypes. And they brought one to HAI, I think it was in Las Vegas, 1978, and it was the R-44 15 years before the R-44.
Yeah.
Okay, a 4-seat, piston powered helicopter.
Affordable.
Yeah, and sold a ton of them. Took a bunch of orders. Unfortunately, they couldn't build them. So what ended up happening is Lycoming at that time had not certified the 6-cylinder engine.
Okay.
And so we were cranking up the boost on this 360 Lycoming. It's like 45 pounds of boost, and Lycoming's like, well, you can run it 50 hours at that, and
great,
and we're like, well, we'll figure that part out later, and we were out flying these prototypes and whatnot, and we just F-Lee did not have the horsepower to get that done.
Sure.
And eventually he had to shelve the program, and to pay the depositors back, he had to sell the company. So the company went through a few more owners, and at that time we had developed the F-28 F series and the 280 F series, which we basically cranked up the boost a little more. This was the early 80s. And put a correlator on, and now you had a real stump puller, 225 horse, tons of useful load. And in 1985, and by then, and again, this is a little bit of history lesson for people.
I just want to say it real fast.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Okay.
Again, we're talking 2024, and the aircraft is here on the show floor today.
Yeah.
From 1950. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's changed iterations, but I think it's really fascinating that all this history too. I mean,
we love it.
That's is that like a big part of the culture of Enstrom? Is this idea of this is this iconic, long-lasting brand?
Yeah, because we've never moved. Okay, so we've always been we're literally in the same spot.
Yeah, that's insane.
Where the very first hangar was this little block building, okay?
Okay.
And we were using that building up until 2014. We finally knocked it down when we did a factory expansion, okay? So we've literally never moved. So you've got people that have just grown up with this company. It's like your grandfather,
sure.
Okay? It's your family. It's always been there. So no, everybody is well versed in the history of Enstrom, because it's just
really
been a part of the community and part of everybody's families.
I think it's important in companies. I think a lot of employees of companies don't actually know the roots of the company that they're working for.
Yeah.
And when I got to connect with you in Spain, I felt like I understood that when we were talking. Like you don't just work at Enstrom. You love Enstrom.
Yeah,
like
it's
you
gets in your blood.
You have really bought into the excitement of being part of this brand, which I think is really cool, and I think it's unique. I don't think you get to see that in a lot of companies, let alone the aviation industry, right? People move around, retention's tough.
Yeah. So
I think that's really cool. So I just wanted to interrupt real fast and just say thank you for this lesson. Please continue.
Yeah.
If you lost your train of thought, you were talking about, had some other owners and things like that.
Yeah, the early 80s, so we'd come up with the F models. But the industry had taken a real downturn. We went from building like 13,000 airplanes in 1979 to 1,300 or something. Okay, the whole industry crashed. But Enstrom, and a lot of companies folded. Enstrom weathered through that. In 1985, the company was bought by a guy named Dean Kamen. So Dean is a relatively somewhat famous guy. Most people know him. He invented the Segway motor scooter, okay, which is pretty cool. But where Dean actually kind of made his mark is Dean invented the insulin pump.
Wow.
And a number of other sort of medical devices, cutting-edge medical devices. He's one of those 10th level geniuses. And he had...
Did he have an Enstrom in his house?
Yes, still does.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I've been to his house. His house is incredible. It has a built-in hangar.
Yeah.
It has a built-in fuel farm. And he's got an Enstrom helicopter. He can walk out of his kitchen and get in his Enstrom and fly the 8 minutes to DECA research and development.
Legit in his house.
Yes.
I'm so glad that we talked about this. This has been bugging me for years. I remember I watched some random Discovery show one time on something, and it was about the inventor of the Segway.
Yeah.
And he was flying in the Enstrom, and he landed at his house. And am I wrong? But does the helicopter actually go in the house?
Yeah. The hangar is literally like your house has a garage.
Yeah.
Okay. He's got a hangar literally designed into his house.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's so
cool.
And
a helipad there, and it's on top of a little mountain in Manchester, New Hampshire.
It's been driving me nuts for years because I'm like, who was that guy?
Yeah.
And is that real? And so it's really cool to actually hear that.
Yeah, so Dean bought the company in 1985, probably against the advice of his accountants, but, that's the way Dean works.
Well, I'm sure Dean had a lot of money.
Yeah, and he just liked the product. And so he had a real eye for design, and he came up with sort of the FX version of the 280, some design features and whatnot on that. But what happened was around then, late 80s, the Army was looking for a new training helicopter. So that was called the NTH program, New Training Helicopter Program. And they had been using, they had started, they were using Schweitzer 269 series, was it TH55s, I think. And when those had sort of timed out, they were using Hueys, but they knew they couldn't keep using the Hueys forever; it's too expensive. But they really liked the Huey because it had 2 seats and it had a jump seat in the middle, in that crew chief seat. And they found out when they put a second student in that crew chief seat that when they land and swap, that second student be like 50% ahead of the first guy.
Yeah, it makes sense actually.
So they're like, okay, we want to carry this forward in a new training helicopter program. And in typical sort of government fashion, they're like, we're just going to go get a commercial aircraft, save money. But there's no commercial aircraft that met the needs. So Enstrom and Schweitzer and a few other people, we kind of all developed aircraft for that. So we started out, we took a 280, we put a turbine in it, Rolls-Royce 250, called it the 280 FXT, and it was an absolute rocket ship, like 145 knots.
Wow.
And we're like, this thing's super cool. It'll never work, but it's really cool. But from that, we kind of did sort of proof of concept. So we came up with what we call TH-28, which was our first turbine production aircraft for the U.S. Army. And it's about a 50% bigger version of a 280 FX turbine engine. Allison at that time, Allison, now Rolls-Royce turbine engine. And this would have been in the early 90s. And we were competing with Schweitzer. They had the 330 at the time, and I think Airbus was there. What would have been Aerospatiale with the AS350, and probably it would have been Hughes or McDonnell Douglas at that time. And so we were really in the catbird seat for that one. We had the best aircraft. It met all the U.S. Army's requirements. It did what they wanted. It flew great. They were very happy with it. And the story I was told, and some listeners may correct me if I'm wrong, but the story I was told was that Schweitzer wasn't ready. This isn't today's Schweitzer. This is old Schweitzer back from the Paul Schweitzer, the Schweitzer brother days. Yeah,
sure.
So, David Horton and those guys are doing a great thing down in Texas. This was back when they were up in Elmira.
Yeah, of course.
So they weren't quite ready, and they requested an extension, and Enstrom agreed. And said, yeah, no problem, because we knew we had a better aircraft. And we said, well, give us a few more months to make ours better. And in that time, there was a dip in the commercial market, and Bell had Jet Rangers coming off the line in Mirabel. And they said, well, what do we do with all these Jet Rangers? And someone looked around. The Army needs some training. We can do that, And they went down to the Army, and they said, well, but, we want this 3 across seating and everything. Yeah, we can figure that out, And they kind of came in with all their lawyers and lobbyists, and in a matter of months, they took over the program.
Wow. And
we just did not have the horsepower to compete with Bell at that time. And so ultimately, we didn't get that program, which was a huge blow to the company. We had hired a bunch of engineers. We're staffing up, and in hindsight, some of the guys have told me in hindsight, if we would have won that, we would have been so screwed, because
of course,
how are we going to build all these helicopters and whatnot? But it seemed like a good idea at the time, and I still have the bid documents. I refer to them sometimes. Those 7 pages of bid documents and all these anthropomorphic studies, and we'd built this instrument panel in there. It looked like a HAI instrument panel. So we had like a full HAI instrument panel stuffed inside this Enstrom. It was really neat.
Have you ever seen like those shows? There's one on Apple TV. It's kind of this idea if history had been different.
Yeah.
And would have transpired. What do you speculate if things would have happened to where Enstrom actually got that contract with the Army?
Yeah.
Would have that changed anything today?
Oh, hell, gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, not only would we have gotten the 150 aircraft the Army bought, but then all kinds of other foreign militaries queue off of that, and it would have provided so much validation and then the parts and everything. Oh yeah, it would have totally been a game changer.
Would have been maybe a different trajectory.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, you're still here.
Yeah, so we kind of took that blow and retrenched, and we actually developed then the 480 series, which was a commercial variant of that helicopter. So we only built about 3 or 4 TH-28s. We have the last one at the factory. We use it as an R&D aircraft.
That's cool.
There's one left in the world.
And it's still flying at R&D?
It still flies, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's about 3,000 very hard hours on it. It's actually my favorite helicopter to fly. It's fully depreciated, so if I prang it, no one cares. But we developed the 480, the turbine series off of that.
Very cool.
And so we started selling those in the 90s. We still kept up with our 280 series and whatnot. And then eventually in the we went through 1 or 2 more owners. We got bought by a Swiss businessman in the early 2000s. And he owned the company for about 10 years, did some upgrades to it and whatnot. And then at that time, we kind of went full circle with the 480 series. We sort of realized, man, this is a great, we designed this thing as a military training helicopter. We should really, we didn't get the U.S. Army program, boo-hoo. We can still sell this to other countries and whatnot. And so we started having some success. We sold a bunch in Indonesian National Police. 2010, we won a contract to sell 30 of them to the Japanese Army. So that was a big program for us. Royal Thai Army bought 16 and whatnot. And so things were really humming along. We were not setting the world on fire, but we were keeping people employed and moving aircraft and keeping our customers happy. We had a nice little company up there in Michigan. And life was good. And about that time, we started getting calls from China. And Chinese government had made a mandate that they wanted to build up their GA infrastructure.
Okay.
And so they were out buying GA assets, and they bought, ended up buying Cirrus, and they bought Continental Motors, and they bought Hiller, they bought Brantley. They were buying anything that was for sale, and Enstrom was for sale. And so in 2012, we were we were acquired by a Chinese conglomerate.
Okay.
And it did not go well. Let's just put it that way.
This is the part of the story of the dark ages.
Yeah, it was a rough time. And nice guys, and they really wanted, they got a billion at that time. They had over 1 billion people over there, all struggling to get in the middle class. Okay, sure. And they're watching TV and they're going, how come we don't have EMS helicopters? How come we don't have, they had 1 billion people and like 200 helicopters in the whole country.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
And we want all this stuff. Okay, and so buying Enstrom was part of getting all that stuff, and they were going to build a factory over there, which eventually they did, and start manufacturing aircraft over there, and they had directed us to build a new factory, so we built a brand new factory, 2014. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Sure.
175,000 square feet.
Wow.
Incredible facility. But we could start to see that there was some sort of cracks in the foundation, okay? And the market that they were really counting on, they thought that they could sustain, Enstrom indefinitely just on the Chinese market,
of course,
alone, and it just never materialized.
Okay.
And so, as a result, at first they were saying, send us aircraft, and we sending them aircraft. Well, now they're piling up over in China, and
it's a popular theme.
Yeah, and now we've got we had ordered parts, engines, everything else. Now we got aircraft stacking up in Michigan, and they're going, we'll go sell them somewhere else. Well, it's not always that easy, right? Yeah. And they started. Now, mind you, this is at that time, I think the parent company was a $35 billion company, okay?
So they had the money.
But for reasons that we never understood, they started funding the company with debt. And so the company was taking on more and more debt. And, we were selling aircraft, and we were selling a lot of parts. And, at that time, I think 2015, we signed a program, 19 aircraft to the Pakistan Army, and more with the Royal Thai Army. 2018, we sold aircraft to the Czech Army. We were the first Western aircraft the Czech Army ever bought. So they came out of communism. They were still flying old Russian stuff.
Interesting.
It was a huge deal for them. I got to go over there and meet Czech Minister of Defense. I was on TV and everything. It was really cool.
Cool.
So so we're doing our thing, but meanwhile, this debt is just piling up, and they kept saying, "Don't worry, well, when time comes, we'll take care of it. Time comes, we'll take care of it. Time comes, we'll take care of it." Well, COVID hit, and the world kind of comes to a stop.
Yeah,
and the time came, and they didn't take care of it. So we're all standing here. This. You kind of touched on it before. I mean, this isn't a job for us. This is our lives.
This is like an extension. This is a family member.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I'm a pretty fortunate guy. I could have gone and gotten a job with Bell or Sikorsky or something like that. But I don't want to do that. Born and raised in the area, and I was my blood ran blue. We wanted to save this company. And so, in what was it? In January of 2022, we filed bankruptcy, and was a really sort of low point.
I mean, it was a sad time.
Yeah. Not
just for you guys, but for the industry.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember reading that and being like, "What? Like, how does that?" It was just. It was a shock, and I think we all felt it because I think we all within the industry appreciated Enstrom Helicopters.
Yeah, it felt like it would never die, I mean, because so for years, Enstrom was always like 1 year from bankruptcy. Like that was always sort of the joke. People would come and just say, "You're still here?" And, yeah, we're still here. And for sort of 60 years we skated along. Always sort of on the next dollar, right? And but we just never died, and it almost felt like it couldn't. It felt we've been here before.
The little train that could.
Yeah, we've been here before. We'll get out of it, and there's always been people like Dean Kamen Jackie Safra, who had owned us at one point, who would come in and buy the company. And even after Dean sold the company, he'd still loan us money once in a while, working capital loans and whatnot.
Sure.
Our TIE program, Dean loaned us the working capital to the TIE program. We always had these sort of patron saints of Enstrom, right,
sure.
that we could go back
to.
The
faithful.
Yeah. And in late 21, when the writing was on the wall, and we had brought them people to buy the company, and they wouldn't sell it. And to this day, I still don't understand that one. But we'd gone back to the faithful, and the faithful had stood up and said, "Yeah, we'll take it back," and they wouldn't do it. They were determined to shut it down, and to spike the football, they did a Chapter 7, not a Chapter 11. So we couldn't even continue operating through bankruptcy. So that was a real blow. But what they didn't count on was a particularly savvy and sort of stubborn judge in northern Michigan.
Okay.
So as I mentioned before, we'd sold training aircraft to the Japanese Army, Royal Thai Army, Czech Army, and whatnot. And all these people are allies in sort of relatively hot parts of the world. Sure. So, we let our Congress people know, hey guys, heads up.
Interesting.
We're about to kneecap these people because they rely on us for parts and support.
Sure.
And whatnot. And, they're allies of the U.S. and, being citizens and good Americans and just good citizens of the world. I mean, we kind of got to let somebody know.
Of course.
And that didn't go over well. And so this judge, he fast-tracked the bankruptcy. First of all, he didn't break up the company. He recognized that it was worth more as a whole.
Sure.
And we had basically the world's fastest bankruptcy exit, man. He turned that thing around within a couple months. And in the meantime, a number of us, sort of the senior people that have been working there, we didn't actually stop working. So all of the customers and whatnot, we couldn't send them parts, but we were still providing technical support.
Wow.
And we're calling, like these foreign militaries going, guys, just sit tight. I know you're worried. I know you saw the, but we're going to come back. We got buyers lined up. I know how many parts you have. I sold them to you. Okay.
Yeah.
You'll be okay.
Sure.
And again, providing technical support. They're calling our tech reps and everything. We're still kind of doing the thing, right?
Was this volunteer?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we came back out of bankruptcy. So what ended up happening was we were bought May of 22 by a guy named Chuck Surack. So Chuck has an interesting history. He's from Fort Wayne, Indiana. And when he was, 19 or 20, something like that, or late 70s, he started a mobile recording studio out of the back of his purple VW microbus. Okay, so, if you had a church choir and you wanted
just like every great story.
Yeah, you wanted to make a or a little band or something, you want to make your own little record, he would record it, right?
Yeah.
And he eventually parlayed that into the world's largest online retailer of musical supplies, a company called Sweetwater Sound.
Incredible.
Yeah. So if you know anybody that's into music, they all have a Sweetwater Sound account. They have a Sweetwater Sound salesperson. And I mean, they sell everything from guitar picks to entire sound systems for bands and churches and whatnot. It's incredible. Okay. It grew this 2,000 person company in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Incredible.
Yeah, this huge company. And it was about 17 years ago, Chuck was going out to the airport, getting on his corporate jet to go visit Reba McEntire or something like that.
Yeah, of course, that's what you do.
Yeah, when you're selling Reba McEntire amps.
Especially when you're in the industry.
Yeah, this is the kind of people Chuck rolls with, right? So, and a guy came in with a helicopter, landed, and Chuck kind of was waiting for the plane, so he walked over and got to talking to the guy, and the guy says, yeah, it's really neat, and just told him about it. And Chuck's dad had been a private pilot. He had a chief or something like that, airplane. And Chuck said, I always thought it'd be fun to learn to fly helicopters, but I'm too old. And he goes, well, how old are you? And I think he was in his late 40s, early 50s at the time. And, oh, no, I'm an in-flight instructor. I've taught guys your age and older to fly. This is not a problem. And she really? He says, yeah. And so he gave him his card, and Chuck went back home and he told his wife about it. And he was sure his wife would say, you're not learning to fly, you idiot.
You're crazy.
And she bought him a Discovery flight.
Okay.
And so he went out.
That's the hook, line, sinker right there.
Yeah. So he went out and he took his Discovery flight and was hooked, and that flight just happened to be in an Enstrom. And so Chuck learned to fly. Started in a 280FX, and then he quickly bought a 480, finished his license in a 480, and has since moved on. Chuck owns, 13 helicopters now, EC-130s, A-Stars. He's got some AW-109s, an AW-169. He's got a 135. But Enstrom has always been near and dear to his heart because that was his first.
I'm interested to kind of hear your thoughts on that because I think you've said it about some other people. Dean came in. Mm-hmm. Now Chuck, you have experience flying the Enstrom. I have 1 hour in a 480, admittedly. So hopefully this is an open invite. I can come to Michigan.
Absolutely.
And we can do some flying together. Yeah. What is it about flying the Enstrom that really captivates pilots, that they really just love about flying that machine?
It's hard to explain, but it's really a pilot's helicopter. It's so smooth and it's so intuitive and easy to fly that you just you have so little bandwidth wasted on flying that you can just enjoy the experience. Yeah. And just the feel on the controls, there's no feedback on the controls, but it's not boosted, so you're feeling it. You're feeling it, but you're not getting vibrations, and it's a bunch of little things that come together, and it feels like driving a really high-end luxury car. It's sort of the difference between, I can go drive a Chevy Malibu or something, just a regular car, and it's fine. And then you get into a Porsche or a Mercedes, and the weight of the steering wheel and just the response and the ride and everything. You get that feeling when you fly an Enstrom. It's just that next level, that step up.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I really want to go fly one now.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on up.
We got to make that happen.
Yeah, definitely.
I would love to see the factory, actually. I think that would be really cool.
Super cool.
To come out there, fly the aircraft. Because, there's obviously a lot of wealthy people that fly helicopters.
Yeah.
But they don't turn around and then buy the company, And maybe there's been some happenstance and whatnot. But to me, that shows, this belief and that this is an incredible machine to fly.
Yeah. When we went bankrupt, and what the Chinese owners had done to us. Chinese people are fine, but our owners were not that great. It offended his sensibilities. Okay, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
And when you offend a billionaire, they can actually do something about it. Okay. So he bought the company and with a goal of not only returning it to its former glory, but making it better,
sure.
Going way above that. All of the companies he owns are sort of industry leaders. They're crown jewels in whatever industry they're in, and so he's invested significantly in the aircraft. And we're starting to see. And it takes a while to get through the certs and whatnot, but we're starting to see a lot of that come true. So
what can we expect now that Chuck is at the helm? I saw some press releases come through the email last night.
Yeah.
An autopilot. My brain's not working. I know there's another press release. I think it was for
piston air conditioning.
Oh, for the air conditioning.
Yeah, autopilot. We got air conditioning in the 480 already, but we're doing piston air conditioning for the 280 FX. The autopilot. All new glass cockpits. Better interiors, better paint jobs, upping the fit and finish. In future growth models. More power, more speed. I can't get into a lot of that, yet. But
come on.
But he wants to grow this company in not just sort of I'm going to fix it and flip it, or just kind of get it back going and let it sit there. It's no, man, I want to grow this thing. I want to make these better. I want these to be the standard in the industry, not chasing the standard.
Sure.
I want it to be setting the standard. And it's just a lot of little things like all the little black plastic shrouds and stuff we used to use. They were just sort of molded black, sort of cheapy plastic.
Yeah.
Well, now we're wrapping all that or using composites.
Sure.
And just little things, turning it from the Chevy into the Cadillac, right?
Totally.
Yeah. And then there's the whole support side of it. So, the guy runs a 135. He's got all kinds of helicopters. He buys from all the OEMs. Okay.
Yeah, he gets it.
Yeah. So he's got to experience support from all the other OEMs, and he wants world-class leading support. Okay, he knows what it's like to be AOG. He knows what it's he knows what good support is. He's gotten great support, and he's going, look, I want my company to have the best support. Okay, so I'm going to buy, put $1.5 million worth of parts on the shelf or whatever the number is. Whatever he's got to do to become a leader in whatever section of the industry, he's willing to invest and do that.
Is it? This is not to throw any knives at anyone, but it seems like support is a common issue among OEMs.
Yeah.
Where, in your opinion, you've been in the business since 2007, or maybe even longer before that.
Yeah.
Why has that been such an issue for our industry specifically?
I hate to use the cop-out word, but it's supply chain. And I'm gonna kind of defend all of my fellow OEMs here because we're all suffering. I can guarantee you. Yes, we have the parts on order. Okay, how come you don't have those bearings? You should have ordered them earlier. Dude, I ordered them 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, and you should have ordered more. I ordered twice as many as we needed.
Sure.
Okay, and they still showed up 6 months late, and then they were defective. And we're all fighting these issues. And it's not just, I'm not trying to blame the vendors, right? But there's been such consolidation at every level of the supply chain. All these vendors have consolidated, and it's just getting so much harder. If company A can't do it, there's oftentimes not a company B.
Sure.
And it's just, and we're all using, there's a handful of vendors that we're all using for a lot of critical components. And you throw 2 international wars in, the government's rearming, and I'm not going to get political here, whatever you think of what's going on. The reality is the U.S. government's on a spending spree, and they're rearming, and they're getting priority. And the fact of the matter is we use the same vendors as Lockheed.
Sure.
Okay? And whether it's going on an F-35 or an F-28F,
sure.
Okay, we need an aerospace quality part, and a lot of times we're using the same vendors, but we do not get, the helicopter industry, especially the civil industry, just does not get the same priority. So, we're all fighting it, and for the most part, and I'm hearing this from all the other OEMs too, we're getting most of the parts.
Yeah.
Okay, for the most part, it's happening. It's been a little painful for the last couple of years. Most of the stuff's going through. There's typically on every aircraft, there's a handful of critical parts that you can't get, and of course, if you happen to need that one, you're upset. Okay.
Of course.
But it's really just coming down to those supply chain issues. It's not an issue of mismanagement. It's not an issue of we're not getting the stuff on order. It's getting stuff through the supply chain.
100%.
Yeah.
With Chuck obviously wanting to be big on support the existing fleet operators, we understand that there's supply chain. Obviously, small fish competing against big companies like Lockheed. What are you guys able to do as a company, and what are you guys doing to kind of keep that support to Chuck's expectation?
Yeah, so we are like ruthlessly searching out new vendors.
Yeah.
Always. If I hear somebody mention the word bearing, I'm like, what? What was that?
Tell me more.
You got a bearing? Make bearings?
Should I be in the bearing business?
Yeah, you should. And if anybody out there, aerospace bearing business, and castings is another one.
All right, producer Zach, is that something that we can get into?
Castings and forgings, right? So we're always searching out new vendors, and we are putting in like bigger orders. Instead of, we need 10, so we'll order, 2 at a time every 2 months or whatever. No, now we're saying, dude, just give me 20, right?
Sure.
Let's try and make it easier on the vendors.
We know it's coming.
Yeah. But it's like calling up the vendor going, what makes your life easiest? Do you want them all ordered ahead of time? You got to juggle Enstrom, Bell, and Sikorsky. We're all using the same stuff. What can I do to make your life easier to get my parts? Okay. So, whether it's order more or payment terms, whatever we got to do, we're just trying to make the vendor's life easier so that they can make our life easier.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, Chuck purchases the business. You guys are now back.
Yes.
It seems to be in the heyday.
Yeah.
I felt really good about seeing Enstrom last year at Heli Expo.
Yeah.
Yesterday, producer Zach and myself were kind of playing around your booth a little bit, shooting some content, checking out the aircraft. what is the short-term future look like for Enstrom, and what is the long-term vision that you guys have as a company?
Yeah, so short-term, we're really focused on certifications, right? And that's the other, supply chain and certification. Those are the two buzzwords. You talk to any OEM, because those are our two big pain points.
And actually, so I guess tangent on that certification.
Yeah.
We've actually had multiple conversations with other leaders of OEMs on this idea of certification.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people within this new space as we enter the new frontier of helicopters that are touting that certification is this easier, simple process.
Yeah.
Just talk to us a little bit about your perspective of certification.
So, certification is, oh boy, I gotta be careful because the FAA listens to this. And we're like, we like those guys. Certification is a huge challenge, and
Sure.
is not easy, and it's only getting harder. And Boeing has not done anybody any favors.
It's been a big topic of conversation around the expo so far.
Yeah, and so what we've sort of termed it within the industry the Boeing hangover. So they had their troubles, kind of a couple boneheaded moves there,
Sure.
with their ODA, and Congress, kind of came down on the FAA and said, hey, you need more oversight of these guys, and it's all trickling down to us. And so we're seeing a lot of reticence from the FAA about delegations.
Sure.
and it's just taking longer to get things through, decisions made, issue papers taking longer to get processed. Everything has just slowed down, and the process itself hasn't necessarily changed. It's not like they've added steps or anything
Sure.
like that, okay? But it's just the response times and the turn times are taking way longer, and there's this sort of almost suspension of reality when you talk to the government. And I use the example of like CRFS, crash resistant fuel systems. So we had some bad accidents in other aircraft, and the Enstroms weren't particularly problems, but bad accidents in other crafts, post crash fires. Okay. A congressman from Colorado rams through the CRFS mandate in the 2018 authorization bill. A little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, but okay, it is what it is. They gave us 18 months to develop CRFS system. Well, I mean, it's taken us well over 2 years to develop that system.
Wow.
Okay? You just can't do it in 18. It's impossible. And this is what the FAA's like. This is safety critical system. This is the FAA going, yeah, we're going to do everything we can to expedite this. Okay.
Yeah, this is the expedition.
Yeah.
Like, this is the quickest way.
Yeah. And I'm not picking on the guys at the ACO. I mean, they're good people. They work hard. And they really want to help. I mean, I've lost track of the number of times FAA guys have, come in on weekends and worked late and everything else to try and get these projects done. Okay. So at every level, when you talk to people at the FAA, they're all going, what can we do to make this better? What can we do to make your life easier? Okay. They all want to help so bad, but the system is just broken.
Yeah.
It's
bureaucracy at its finest.
Yep. I hate to say it, but it's just broken. And it's getting exponentially worse every year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a common theme that we're hearing and I'm discussing is, undermanned, underpowered. There's also a lot of kind of new players within this vertical space that seem to be taking up a lot of time and resources.
Yeah.
Which, that could maybe be a podcast on itself, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a conversation for a different day. But I'm glad that we got to talk. I'm kind of challenging all the CEOs that I'm talking with this week, and officers of companies, of course, of kind of their thoughts on certification. Because I don't think that we necessarily always understand as a consumer or as an operator just what the hurdle of certification looks like. Yeah. I mean, this is all kind of actually new to me because it's not the space that I'm in. Yeah. And so it's really interesting to hear. But I did cut you off. So the future for Enstrom.
So, like I said, right now we're working through. We relatively quickly got our production certificate back, so we could build parts, and we're getting ready to do the aircraft side of that. And we've actually built some aircraft. We got a couple aircraft that are shipping. We got a brand new one in the booth here. But we're kind of slow rolling some of our aircraft production, waiting on some certification of these new products. Chuck really wants he doesn't want to build yesterday's helicopter anymore.
Of course.
Okay, we can, and I got some foreign military customers that are doing some fleet additions and whatnot, and they want those legacy aircraft. And that's fine, so we're building them for them.
Sure.
And you've seen the announcements. We do press releases when we ship those. So, but when to really launch back into the market and whatnot, he wants the latest class cockpits,
of course,
and air conditioning and autopilots and things like that. Okay, so as we work through these certifications, we're kind of slow rolling our production. We'll be ramping that up. Most of these cert projects will be done by the end of this year.
It's good.
And so we're starting to ramp up our production in anticipation of that. So in the near term, that's really our focus. In sort of the medium term or the long term, it's really about growing the brand, growing the sales. Getting up. We're never going to hit Robinson type numbers. Okay, we're not going to be doing 200-300 aircraft a year. I'm not sure we really want to be there.
Sure.
Okay, but we feel there's a good market, for us, and that we can go out and get that market. And so it's about growing the company to reach its potential.
What have you seen since Chuck's taken over on people's excitement of the brand kind of now re-emerging? Are you guys getting really positive feedback? Is there a lot of excitement?
Oh, yeah, it's through the roof.
Yeah, the buzz is palpable, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I can't count the number of people in the last year that have come up to me and just said, "I'm so glad you're back."
Yeah,
I'm
nice.
I'm so glad you're back, and the industry needed you, and it's like, wow, we had friends. We really did have friends, right?
Yeah.
And they did miss us. Because you kind of wonder, like, oh, if we go away, anybody even notice?
Sure.
Well, they noticed.
Yeah.
Okay, and so yeah, I mean, the response from the industry and pilots and owners and even people who don't even own Enstroms and whatnot has just been sort of universally positive, and that really helps us. We take that back. And I'm very fortunate. I get to go out and meet all the customers and whatnot. So, we do our best to bring that back to the factory and say, guys, what we're doing here matters.
Sure.
Okay. And everybody's excited about us coming back. And we're using that to kind of feed, fuel the fire, right? And keep everybody back there motivated and excited about what they're doing and saying, hey, understand you're up here in Michigan, in the little tiny town in Michigan, what you're doing matters. And people are noticing and they appreciate it.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, Enstrom's kind of like that grassroots company that's always been there.
Yeah.
Grassroots with big backing, too. It's and so I think it's just a bit of a staple within this industry, and it seems like you guys are on what seems to be a really good trajectory.
Yeah.
Strong leadership, obviously great retention. You've been at the company since 2007.
Yeah.
How many employees have similar retention like you do?
A lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of employees that have been there 20, 25 years. We have one guy who was there since 1969, I think. He's 85 years old. Yeah.
And it's still working.
Oh, God. And he outworks most of he's incredible.
God.
Yeah, he's forgotten more than most of us will ever know.
I need to know what his secret is.
Yeah. Don't stop, right?
Yeah, I guess. Keep going.
Yeah, he's amazing. But yeah, it's pretty typical. We did sort of turn over around 2012, 2013. We kind of had a generational turnover, and we did a good job of transferring that. We call it tribal knowledge, right?
Sure.
Okay. If the FAA is listening, everything is on drawings and whatnot. Okay, but we all know that there's. Yeah, you always build this part to the high side of the tolerance and whatnot. And that's the tribal knowledge part, okay? And so we've done a really good job of transferring that tribal knowledge. And I think sort of the biggest testament to the loyalty of the employees is, we were shut down there for about 6 months. And even leading up to that, we had wound the company down. There wasn't a lot of people left that last year. And when we restarted, that was one of Chuck's big questions was, hey, if I buy this thing, can I get the people back? And we said, yeah, Chuck, no problem. You can get them back. We had no clue, but, whatever, Sure. Yeah, you bet. 90% of the people we called came back.
That's awesome.
So we got back all the critical skill, and all the tribal knowledge. It all came back.
It's all back.
And these, by the way, these people had jobs. So it's a real tight job market in Marinette, Menominee. There's a big shipyard up there that builds ships for the U.S. Navy, and so all these people had other jobs. In some cases, higher paying jobs, and they all came back to Enstrom.
They came back. They came back home.
Yeah, because they just, it just gets in you, and they just love what they do. So, and to me, I mean, that was just, so heartwarming. It was unbelievable that we got so many people back, just bringing the family back together.
Yeah, I mean, I think as an industry, we all feel excited that Enstrom is where it's at today.
Yeah.
It's get a little dicey there for a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah. You're a loyal man, right? You've been on multiple iterations of this.
Yeah.
And it seems like you probably feel pretty good about the current stance of where you're at and where Enstrom's at as a company.
Yeah, I mean, that 5 months where I was laid off or whatever, my wife's like, you're looking for another job, right? Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Sent out a resume the other day, hon. Hang on, I got to take this call from Enstrom customer. She finally shook her head. She's like, yeah, whatever. She knew what was going on. So
that's cool, though. I mean, that's a testament to the company.
Yeah,
and that's neat. We've talked about a lot of military training use and things like that. What are some other applications that the Enstrom can be used for? Are there markets that you guys are pushing to be used for? Yeah,
I mean, it's a helicopter. They're all Swiss Army knives. And we've got customers that do egg spray. We've got law enforcement customers. We've got customers who do power line commercial work. I got a customer that slings Christmas trees with them, and everything else. But really, our two biggest markets are that foreign military market. That's really strong for us. It's a good aircraft for that. And the sort of private owner market.
Totally.
And we let that market get away from us about 15 years ago. The management of the company at the time, they were big airplane people. So they were from Bell, they were from Boeing, and I'm not picking on Bell or Boeing, but they're very commercial focused.
Sure.
And so Enstrom was kind of commercial, sort of military focused, and we didn't do what we needed to do to keep those private owners
Makes
happy.
Sense.
Okay. And that's sort of my world. I came up on the private. My dad was a private pilot, and I grew up on a little grass strip. We had a grass strip in the backyard. My dad restored airplanes. Okay, so
awesome.
So I'm 8 years old. Crawling in the back of the fuselage, holding a wrench, right? And so that was my world I came up in, and that's Chuck's world. Okay, so he's got a 135. He's a commercial helicopter pilot, very experienced pilot, by the way. But he's at heart, he's a pleasure flyer. Okay.
Totally.
And so we let that get away, and we're going to get that back. Okay. And so a lot of what we're doing to the aircraft right now, a lot of the changes that we're making to the aircraft, and we're going to be starting to change our marketing and whatnot, is to go back and get that market. Okay. So that doesn't mean that if law enforcement, if a police department calls up, wants a helicopter, we're not going to, oh no, we don't do that, right? No, We'll certainly build you one, and commercial operators and whatnot, but we're not focusing as hard on those as we're really focusing on that private owner market. We really feel that there's a lot of potential there. We feel that the qualities of the Enstrom, the things it does well, mesh well with that market. It's
totally.
A really good fit.
Yeah,
okay?
No, I see that.
So, and so that's where we're going to try and take it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're happy that you're back.
Me too.
And I can't wait to check out the booth again. We had a little sneak peek yesterday when we were shooting some content. Definitely going to come and visit you.
Yeah, you got it. The factory's so cool. So we build. This is what's somewhat unique about Enstrom is we're very vertically integrated. So we build over 90% of the airframe in the factory. This is what people don't realize. And you go in that factory, and we've got sheet metal guys. We've got we got a full machine shop. We've got a composite shop. We blow our own glass.
Wow.
Okay. Build our own wire harnesses. I mean, we build it all, weld shop, everything. A lot of OEMs, they're subcontracting those things out, and they're just kind of doing the assembly. We don't. So when you walk through that factory, you're going to see guys literally laying up the cabins. You're going to see guys literally riveting the tail cones together. You're going to see guys machining the swash plate parts, bonding the blades. I mean, it's all done under this one roof, and it's just amazing to see. Like, I grew up working on airplanes and whatnot, and I walk through that factory every day, and I still, after 17 years, I still find stuff that I'm like, whoa, that's how they do that. That's so cool,
Awesome.
and I'll go and I'll talk to the guys, and this is the tool we use to make this particular part, and, you got to pound it over this piece of metal or whatever, and wow, that's really cool. I learned something new. And
that's so cool.
And so, I'm kind of a geek for that, I guess. I don't know, but
well, you're in the right business. For sure.
It's so much fun to walk through that factory, and it doesn't just look like a big repair station or something. I mean, we're just literally making all the parts, and you can see the raw metal come in one end and a finished helicopter come out the other.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to come. I would love to see it. I'm excited to check out the booth more. To our listeners, if you're not familiar with Enstrom, get familiar. It's a company that's been around since 1959.
Yeah.
And it really seems like there's just an energy around Enstrom that we haven't seen for quite a while. And that's just super exciting. So I'm grateful for you coming on the show. We can't wait to do more things with Enstrom.
You bet.
Come up there, maybe do an in-helicopter podcast.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Fly the aircraft.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I want to get a little touchy-feely with it, being a pilot myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And without having, limited experience. So, Dennis, thank you so much for joining the platform today. Again, you guys, we are shooting live from HAI Heli Expo. In fact, during the show, there was some guy that was rubbing his hand on the glass here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed, he rubbed here. He then went behind you. He rubbed there. He then went by Zach, rubbed there. It's like, what are you doing? But I guess that's kind of the excitement of doing the in-person. Dennis, thank you for joining. And to our listeners, please make sure that you're liking, subscribing to the Helicopter Podcast. Take care. Thanks, Dennis. Hey, podcast listeners. My name is Halsey Schider, and I'm the principal broker and owner of Helicopter. Helicopter is a new age, data-driven, helicopter-specific sales brokerage, bringing helicopter listings to new heights. At Helicopter, we utilize digital positioning, paid advertising, and our large network of industry professionals to move your helicopter quickly and efficiently. Unsure the value of your helicopter? Lucky for you, Helicopter offers a complimentary market evaluation. All you have to do is contact the team today. Are you ready to take your helicopter listing from Mayday to payday? Easy. Fill out the contact information below, and a Helicopter pilot agent will reach out shortly. Helicopter. List it, sell it, done.